When Gwen was first revealed, some people got annoyed that even though she is a doll who came alive, she doesn't really have any doll aspect. She pretty much looks like a normal human. In this argument, I understand both sides. I agree that Gwen could look cooler if she was more doll-like. But at the same time, I understand why Riot turned her into a normal human. The point is that she was turned into a human, and she's now learning about what it's like to be alive. So having her stay as half doll, half human wouldn't get the same feel. In the end, it is just a design decision, and it's not really that big of a deal. But now that Gwen's lore was revealed, people got annoyed at another thing. Gwen's story doesn't really reveal anything, and it doesn't really have a turn or a twist. Which is why people started comparing Gwen to Seraphine. Here I have to say there is a major difference between the two. While Seraphine's story ultimately had no goal or purpose, Gwen's character does. As you'll see, her bio is full of hints and setups for future stories. But the issue is that besides these setups, her story is quite empty. Normally, these cliffhangers are really cool if the champion themselves have a really cool story on their own. For example, I didn't mind Silas's story cutting off right after he escaped Demacia, because the escape itself was a really cool story. Gwen doesn't have that, and that's why people got disappointed by the story. But before we draw conclusions and we start calling the story good or bad, let's have a look at the story first. So without further ado, here's Gwen, the Hallowed Seamstress. Within the long-lost kingdom of Kamavor, there once lived a village of people far from the throne. It was here in the ruler colonies where a humble seamstress made her beloved doll, Gwen. What Gwen can remember from her past, she remembers with love. The seamstress and the doll spend their days crafting, scissors resting in Gwen's still hands, as her maker stitched nearby with needle and thread. At night, the two could be found crouched under the dinner table, the seamstress challenging Gwen to makeshift duels, the clash of silverware against scissors echoing in their candlelit kitchen. In time, the game stopped and the light faded. Gwen could not understand why, but whenever she struggled to recall details, she felt a twinge of pain, tied to a man whose name and face escaped her. As her memories washed away with the ocean tide, Gwen lay still for centuries, quiet and forgotten. Then, one night, her eyes opened. Gwen awoke for the first time on a shadowy beach far from her home. By magic unbeknownst to her, she had been transformed into a living girl who could move her hands and feet all on her own. Gwen took to life with joy. She skipped across the sand, amazed by how far her eyes could see, how wondrous every pebble was to her touch, and how incredible the wind felt on her back. Along the coast, scattered debris left abandoned for a millennium caught her attention. Lying beside broken chests were oddly familiar tools: scissors, needles, thread. Gwen recognized them immediately. These were her maker's tools. When her fingers touched them, a burst of mist glinting with light flowed from her hands. To her, it felt safe and warm, like the soothing embrace of a hallowed past. But Gwen was not the only one drawn to this magic. Lurking in the aisles, a different mist swarmed. Black in color, it coiled and twisted, forming into fearsome wraiths. Something within Gwen's newfound presence attracted them, something they hungered for with obsession. As the wraiths came for her, Gwen was undeterred. She thrust her scissors at them. To her delight, more of her mist filled the air, enchanting the size and strength of her tools, and turning them from mere steel into spectral magic. But the wraiths were relentless. They swelled in number, fueled by the ever-growing black mist. Gwen began to feel a tragic, strangely familiar pain. Surrounded by wraiths, suppressed memories surfaced. She recalled images of her maker, sick and wounded, lying in anguish. Near her was a man whose face finally returned to Gwen, Viego. Remembering his name brought Gwen to her knees. Wistfully, she reflected on the bygone moments spent with her maker, a happier, simpler time, and stole one final glance at her scissors. It was then Gwen realized something amazing. Her maker, victim to that man's twisted vanity, was not fully gone. The seamstress's tools, the very tools that sewed and stitched Gwen together, were now in her hands. Gwen believed this was no accident. She knew deep down her maker was still with her, still fighting. This was a gift Gwen would not take for granted. Grasping needles and thread, she spun clouds of hallowed mist to push back the swarming wraiths. Her scissors slashed hard and fast, reminiscent of those blissful nights when her maker imagined grand battles beneath their kitchen table. Soon, the wraiths were no more. Though triumphant, Gwen recognized this was only the beginning. She could sense these wraiths and Viego were linked, both responsible for the spread of immense pain. With no time to lose, she resolved to track the black mist and stop it at any cost. Gwen expected this endeavor to be strenuous, yet she reveled in every second of her being alive. For who knew how long this blessing would last? Having been given a unique chance at life, Gwen chooses to be an indomitable positive force against all odds. She journeys across Runeterra, determined to restore joy to those who are hurt and suffering. To Gwen, each moment is precious, and each step driven with purpose. As you can see, on the surface, Gwen's story is fine. Nothing major happened in it, and it just gave her a bit of context. But as we mentioned at the beginning of this video, it is hiding a lot of hints at the future stories. And all the interesting bits get revealed once you dive a bit deeper into it. And so, let me give you a quick list of all the possible teasers. First of all, the story confirmed that Gwen came alive after a fragment of Isolde's soul slipped into her body. This was confirmed because the wraiths targeted Gwen specifically. Because as we know, the black mist is spreading around the world because it is looking for Isolde. That's why the black mist wanted to get Gwen. It's the exact same reason why it was going after Senna. We also learned that Gwen ended up on the beaches of the Shadow Isles, so Viego had to take the doll with him as he carried Isolde's body to the Blessed Isles. Next, we learned that Isolde is from a village far away from the throne of Camavor, so she was really just a girl from a village before Viego met her. Also, remember that Camavor is on an entire new continent to the east. Then, the story mentioned that Gwen is surrounded by her own hallowed mist. And as was teased in her voice lines, this could mean that the hallowed mist was created by the fragment of Isolde's soul. And because Viego is the source of the black mist, this means that both Isolde and Viego are sources of two different counteracting mists. Then, if you go to Gwen's page, you may notice that Yorick is related to her. This may be hinting at the fact that the Maiden of the Mist might be another fragment of Isolde's soul. And finally, Gwen knows that Isolde was technically poisoned and later she died because of Viego. In fact, before the two got married, Gwen knew Isolde was happy. And so she now blames Viego for all the misfortunes. The way it is revealed in the story makes it sound like Isolde was not happy in their marriage. So maybe while Viego was possessed with Isolde, maybe although she loved him back, she wasn't as possessed with him as he was with her. Their relationship is definitely something that will be explained more in the future. So overall, is Gwen's story as bad as people say? No, not really. The reason why all of these teasers save Gwen's story is because we know that the story will move forward in 2021. There will be at least 2 more champions continuing the story of Viego. So these story setups are almost guaranteed to pay off later this year. Though this also means that we need to figure out how will Gwen be related to a Yordle. But more curiously, we saw Viego in Teemo's journal. And there one of his eyes was swirly. I wonder if this is also somehow connected to Gwen's eyes.